Hello and welcome to Trading Day. The negotiations continue today with all the clubs. We have 1 week to go with the trade period. 2 players found a new home, and I'll get the opinions of the 300 gamers sitting next to me, Brad Johnson and Nick Del Santo, shortly. But let's go to our news hound, John Ralph. Massive day, John.
Hello, guys. We've made 3 trades. We've brought in the blue blazer brigade. I absolutely love it. So interesting to see what you guys have got. You might have to lift. The other guys have been on their form today. Hey, there has been one significant trade. So Jeremy Finlayson is now a Port Adelaide player, one that Port Adelaide has acquired for, let's face it, next to nothing, a future third rounder. Now, I've spoken to Chris Davies, the Port Adelaide football boss. He says that they love his versatility. He loves the fact that he was able to kick 44 goals in a grand final year, and certainly he's keen to put up his hand to play second ruck. Now, at the very least, he puts pressure on Charlie Dixon and Georgiadis and also Todd Marshall. 23-9 from 13 games this year. But let's face it, does he get this club closer to a premiership? What are your thoughts?
I don't think he puts pressure on the guys you mentioned. I think he sits fourth in the rung in terms of that. His manager even said today that he's probably not in their best 22. He's got a lot to prove to go there. They get a player who's already started training. He's committed. So it's up to Jeremy Finlayson on what effect he has for Port Adelaide. But he does sit behind those other 3 talls for me.
The other bit that you take into consideration, a future third rounder. So they haven't given up a great deal for him. They won't be paying him a great deal. So there's nothing wrong with bringing that guy into your football club as a backup, Jono, or as that fourth tall if you ever need it. We've seen him play some really good games of football, but the reality is he's also inconsistent. So you have to take that risk on when you take on Jeremy Finlayson. But I think it's an OK decision, but we need to see how it actually plays
Port
out.
Adelaide play fast. He likes fast footy.
Yep.
So that's what may be the benefit for a Finlayson.
That's what I would have said with the Giants. The speed of ball movement, he's going to fit exactly where he's going to...
Everything's got to be about playing fast. We're playing finals footy. Can he stand up in finals? And I reckon you guys have got some question marks. Now, I can tell you now that the Finlayson trade now means that Peter Adams is much more likely to leave. Now, I understand Sydney is his preferred home, so Port would want a fair bit for him. But if that Jordan Dawson deal gets done, well, Sydney will have a couple of high picks. And certainly then I think it's likely that Adams finds his way to Sydney.
Well, with Adams finds his way to Sydney, I think that's a pretty good deal because you've just discussed, obviously, Finlayson. Like, that's for nothing. So how do you see that?
Well, that's right. If Laddams is there, Finlayson drops it probably down another peg as well. So that sort of deal has to come forward now, and it probably works for the Sydney Swans if they can get him.
The writing's on the wall for Adams. I mean, there's your answer about where you sit in the pecking order of that football club being Port Adelaide. We know what the Swans did last year, bringing in Tom Hickey and how good he's been. So if you get Hickey and Laddams, it's not a bad little combo you got. It's the 2 ruck combination.
And we all think that, look, they need to bring in a senior midfielder. They're really bullish about the capacity for Dersma and Butters and Rosie to play as centre-square midfielders. Yep. They want to give them their head next year.
They want something, Port Adelaide, let's be honest. They get to the finals and they're looking for that extra leg up. They had a pretty healthy list throughout the year, and as you mentioned, I'm intrigued to where he slots in.
Yeah, look, it was more performance-based, that game against the Bulldogs where they had players that were very good the week before just didn't play well in the biggest game of the year for the footy club. So I think Ken Hinkley sits there and go, OK, we can work on that. We've got to get that right from an individual point of view. Collectively as a team, they're in a pretty good spot.
The elephant in the room, does Kenny Hinkley have to eyeball him and say, I need you to be a more physical player under the way we play?
I think so.
And I think he already has eyeballed them. He should have eyeballed them.
If there's one eyeball that's going to scare you, it's Ken Hinkley.
Yeah, that's right.
And Finlayson, though.
Yeah, that's a starting point for all players. If you're not competitive, you're going to be inconsistent, and that's what Finlayson has been at his time at the Giants.
Well, let's talk about Luke Dunstan. He came out publicly and said, I don't think Brett Ratton rated me. Well, obviously, guess who rates him? Solomon Goodwin.
That's right, a third income drive-by. It was fantastic. We loved seeing that. Now maybe he knew that he was already going to the Melbourne Football Club because that's where he's landed as a delisted free agent this afternoon. A really busy afternoon for Melbourne. Now, only the last couple of minutes, a 4-club trade has just dropped. It is a pick swap, but it is significant. So they have secured the Dogs pick 17. They've handed over their own future first-rounder. Now, the Dogs now have the points for Sam Darcy, their father-son. They have picks 23, 44 and 34. Melbourne has picks 17, 37 and 47. They keep trading out their first rounder and then they get it back in as well. So now Adelaide cannot get that pick 17 from Sydney. So they can't give it up for Jordan Dawson. So that Sydney-Adelaide deal for Jordan Dawson, it looks really, really hard to get done. Adelaide's first pick is 4 and then 33. 33 is not going to get it done for Jordan Dawson. But what do you think about Dunstan's chances of playing senior football at Melbourne?
I can't see it at all. So it's a 2-year deal. I can't see all being equal, how he breaks into that midfield. We know a couple of guys moved on, Nathan Jones and Vandenberg, so he's a replacement for the replacements. Now, I think in his heart of hearts, and all players are like this, I can break in, back me in, coach, I'll be able to do it for you. But I just can't see it happening. He gets the security of the 2 years, But the only way Luke Dunstan plays in my mind, if something has gone significantly wrong in the midfield of the D's.
You get the mindset approach. That's great, and you want that as your coach. But you've got Viney, Petrarca, Oliver, and Harms sitting in front of him. So he's going to have to rely on a bit of injury, or he does something magical at half forward on a wing, which we haven't seen before.
They've already got really good players in those areas, clearly, and you've got young guys coming through that will demand more midfield time.
The question is, has he played that role before? Well, he's played it for the 3 years at St Kilda. Let's be honest, he's been not their number one go-to in terms of their midfield. So he comes into Melbourne's, I think a good system helps players. So I think he will help Melbourne definitely in terms of their depth.
I look at Mark Williams and he said, I fixed Ed Langdon, I fixed Clayton Oliver. This is my greatest project in Luke Dunstan, who can be an OK kick, but he dumb kicks it. So all of a sudden, he gets into a great system. We get to see what he wants to do. I look at this trade period, guys, as it was the trade period that basically hands Melbourne back-to-back premierships. None of their rivals in the top 10 have effectively got better. So last year, Geelong, we bring in Jeremy Cameron. Port Adelaide, they bring in Aliir, they bring in Orazio Fantasia. This year, Geelong, very little. Brisbane, stuff all. St Kilda, nothing. Sydney lose Dawson. Freo lose Chera. GWS lose Mumford and Finlayson. The Dogs lose 4 fringe players. Might get a fringe ruckman in. Would Melbourne be just sitting back and going, this is fantastic, just smoking the cherry? How good is this?
Why don't you stick your neck out, Ralphie? You've gone back-to-back. I went for a 3-peat with Richmond. I got 2 out of 3. They're setting it up now for a dynasty. Let's be honest.
Well, not only that, but their age demographic, the amount of football that they've played together, they are set up for the next couple of years, no matter who comes. But it's a very good point, Ralphie, because those teams need to make up the difference. So the Dogs lose by roughly 70-odd points now. It was a blowout in the end. But those teams need to make up that gap, percentage-wise. And that's assuming that the D's don't get any better from what they were this year already. So it is significant. You can't see any of those teams pushing up through personnel. So therefore, it has to be a game-style change.
And look, it's be interesting in another 7 days' time, Ralphie, to just assess, what you've just said then to where it will be at that point. And I understand it's early and it's exactly the way that it is at the moment. Back-to-back, they're in a sweet spot. They've got every opportunity. Everyone said that about the Bulldogs in 2016. They're a young team. Look at where they'll go. Took them years to get going again. So it's been really interesting from a Melbourne point of view for that perspective. But they're in a great spot to have another crack at it.
And they're in that spot because they set themselves up years ago. They invested in the draft, they got hammered for it, and they're actually getting the fruits of it now. So a back-to-back, Ralphie. Next time you go with it, don't be a letterbox and sit on the fence here on this show, Trading Show. Eddie Betts finds a new home.
Yes, and not at the Carlton Football Club as a development coach, but he's gone down to Geelong, which is just fantastic for them. We're in multiple fronts there. So a part-time coaching and leadership role. He says, I'm going to teach the small forwards. Hasn't Eddie got some tricks to try and impart to those guys? So if you're Geelong and you're battling Essendon for Tyson Stengel, the SANFL star, surely Betts gives them the whip hand. So it was just an OK player with significant issues off the field, Stengel. But this year, 44-26 in 19 games, including an SANFL premiership, 3 hauls of 3 goals in the finals. Now, he is an unrestricted free agent. Essendon missed out on Gold Coast forward Malcolm Roses. They've lost Irving Mosquito, so very keen to have a crack at him as well. Have you seen enough of Stengel to believe that he can make it? And more to the point, after, let's face it, about 3 chances, does he deserve another one, a 4th chance?
Well, he's going to get the 4th chance. So it's up to him now, 22 years of age, whether he's just got that maturity now within himself that he's learned from the mistakes and can move past it. Maybe Eddie allows that to happen in some way if it does happen down at Geelong. If he does get to Geelong, he probably steps straight in front of Myers, Dalhouse, Close, Atkins in some ways, because he has got that X factor. He's got a bit of flair about him, more flair than what some of these other guys have on their list at the moment.
And the difference with Stengel compared to those guys coming out of the under-18 system, he actually has some evidence behind him. So is the question, can he play at this level? Yeah, he can, because we've seen it in glimpses over the last few years when he was at Adelaide. So I do know he can play at the level. The challenge for him is, as you touched on, is the discipline that this game demands on-field, but particularly off-field. Can he fit into that system? If there's any system that can provide that, you would think it is the Cats with their culture.
Well, that's right. And most clubs think that they can fix anyone. So if you've got a 3 strike, you're probably on your last legs. But to get another opportunity, this might be the turning point. As we look at it now, Ralphie, we just touched on Geelong, and I want to lean to you, Jono, in terms of their premiership window, right? We all think they're on a cliff and they're halfway down. What do they need to do to win a flag?
Well, they'll still be sitting there going, OK, in 12 months' time, we could still be holding the premiership cup up. And they've got to think that way because of the star factor. You go, OK, where does the value add come from? You look at the reigning premiers in the Melbourne Footy Club and they've got their stars, but the value add they got this year from Bailey Fritz, who was up 48%, Keziah Pickett, Trent Rivers, Salem, Tom McDonald and Spargo. But then you add into that as well, I think, Neil Bullen, Bowie and Petty, who had great seasons within themselves, especially Bowie towards the back end and wins a premiership medal. So from that you go, okay, where they drafted these guys, they drafted Fritz at 31, Pickett at 12, Rivers at 32, McDonald 53, Salem at 9, top end, and Spargo at 29. So they've been able to value add through the draft, but these guys this year in particular, when they've won the flag, have been sensational. So then you go to the Cats and you go, OK, where does their value add come from? Because they're not going to be able to trade in this year like they have in the past, where they've got Danger or Cameron or Isaac Smith and Higgins. So you go to what's on the list at the moment and you go through them, and we just haven't seen them, unfortunately. We've seen a little bit of Holmes. Parfitt we've seen a little bit of, and Narkle as well. And can those guys, or can 3 or 4 on this particular list here, actually stand up next year and have a season that adds the value required to get them into a grand final, or get them to win finals, for example? Because Clark's contracted, probably going to go. Can Sammy Simpson do it? Yep. Can Zach Guthrie stand up? He's played enough footy now. Can he have an unbelievable year, similar to what a Petty did for Melbourne? That's where the Cats internally have to try and add value for what they've already got on their list.
I like a lot of those young guys. I don't know if they will be the difference in 12 months' time. These guys need it. And you're talking about winning premierships. This is not about playing finals. They can do that year in, year out. This has actually been the difference from where they have been for the last 5 years, actually taking that next step to win the whole thing, Jono. I don't know if it's in that group right there. That's why I think it has to be a style change. The players that they've currently got are brilliant players, and I acknowledge everything that they have been, but the system and the style hasn't worked to this point to win the whole thing. I think the game style has to change.
But Chris Scott has to give them the chance.
But will that group, any of those particular players, and I'm saying there's a lot of good players there, are they going to be the difference from where they sit right now to win the whole thing in 12 months' time? Of
that group, you've got Parfitt, Narkle, Rattigalia, and then that's why I added in Simpson, Guthrie, possibly Clark if they can't get the deal done. They're the 5 or 6 of the real value add that could assist the stars that they've got in there. Some of the others, yes, haven't played footy and haven't played much footy over the last 12 months, but might get 10 or 12 games in that you go, OK, Geelong are now got some good underneath.
And that's also
talent.
Assuming that the players that have been brilliant and A-graders for a long time are still at that level.
Exactly.
Still at that level.
You guys are all magnificent kicks. Can Patrick Dangerfield improve his kicking at 32 years
He has to.
No.
There's no question. I think he can. If he really wants to, if Danger really wants to and focus that specific skill over the summer, no question. There is none whatsoever in my mind that he can fix some of the skill execution in his game.
No.
I think
it's a flat no.
I think you can pick better decisions. You can become a better kick by the decision that you choose and swim between the flags. Take what the easiest option is for you, for any particular player. This is Danger, but it could be anybody. If he picks better options going forward, Jono, he will be a better kick.
I haven't seen an improvement in his kick in the last 5 years.
That's the point, though. It's up to Danger.
Is the point. So he's a professional athlete getting paid the maximum amount of money down at Geelong to be the best player he can be, to take them to the next level and win a premiership. And if that marginal gain you're talking about, Jono, is still lingering, then I'm sorry to say he's not going to.
But even if it's a 5 or 10% increase in effectiveness, that is big in his game because his game's already here. So we're not talking about a 20% increase. You're talking about an incremental increase in their best player.
Goal kicking would be a significant one.
Well, it would be. It's a component of all of it, I think. But if he commits to that, and Scotty and the coaches that they get commit to him from that point of view, and just he's a star, leave him alone, like let him do his own thing. No. Here's the difference between maybe winning it next year, if he can get that right.
Dicko, no one's got better Hawthorn mail than you. So John Segler is someone who Geelong are interested in, and also the Western Bulldogs. Are you certain that he will be traded?
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah, he's certainly not going to be at Hawthorn next year, so I think the leader in this stage would be the Western Bulldogs. Obviously, Geelong are desperate for a ruckman. But you can just see with Jonathan Segler, he's got some football left in him. Hawthorn are not where he needs. We've got Reeves and we've got big boy McAvoy. So he's finding a new home. So it's whether it's the Western Bulldogs
or
Who do
you think he should choose out of those two options?
Western Bulldogs.
Dogs. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's big for the Dogs. If they're able to secure Segler and O'Brien as a double act in terms of what they could do positionally for the Bulldogs, that then starts to challenge what you're talking about earlier with the Melbourne Footy Club going back to back.
This is the time to get the Hawks because I think Sam Mitchell coming in and Alistair Clarkson's not there anymore. It's time to change. So I think Sam's coming in with a fresh set of eyes and he's going to rebuild the list. Now, he can only... Last time Hawthorn went to the draft table, Jason Dunstall had hair. So Sam Mitchell is literally looking at us right now going, this is where we're going and this is what we're doing. You look at their draft set up towards Clarkson's era. Clarko arrived at the end of 04, and his first coaching year was 05. Now, Luke Hodge was our first pick in 2001. Guess how we got that pick? We traded out Trent Crode. 2 years later, we got him back, and he was a centre-half back in our 2008 premiership team. So they set up from a long way out with Gary Buckenara and Chris Pelkin. But I think Hawthorn are going to do exactly the same thing right now. So Gunston's on the table. To be honest, everyone's on the table. But as we look at it now, you've got Tom Mitchell, got a great ball magnet, ball winner. Melbourne's just got Luke Dunstan as a backup to that very problem. So these guys are out there, but Hawthorn are not going to shop. They don't shop. You've got to come into the shop, open the door and actually ask politely what's on the table.
So if you're going to shop, you need money, and no football club out there has got salary cap money. How strongly are they considering paying 2/3 of or half of some salaries for some really significant players?
Well, they've got some room. So room means I'm prepared to negotiate and pay some, pay the price.
Yeah.
I'll say pay the price because if you want to get to the draft table and you want to get the picks you want, you're prepared to pay the price because, they're not going to exceed the salary cap, but they've got room to move to obviously accommodate for a lot of clubs.
So Brisbane are desperate to get a senior player in, but they just haven't got the salary cap room. So what would Jack Gunston be on, who makes so much sense at Brisbane, given that they're saying, well, we've probably got 150 grand of cap space? How does Jack Gunston get to Brisbane?
Well, Hawthorn would front up 200 and... to be honest, Brisbane would front up the rest. Yep. So I think in terms of Jack Gunston, where he's at right now, I'd love to see him go to Brisbane. And I say that as a Hawthorn person because he could go up there and help them with their success. And he could play a pivotal role to Joe Danaher. And it'd be great to see the number 19 finally get to Brisbane. I had an opportunity in 01 and left my phone off, Jono, during the trade period. Lee Matthews said we need a small forward, and then they did the trade. Clarkson, Keating to Hawthorn, and I was obviously off to Brisbane. Didn't answer my phone and missed 2 flags after that.
That doesn't, you're sitting well with that, aren't you?
I'm sitting extremely well.
Yeah.
Retired in 07, they won it in 08.
So Freo are really keen now and really optimistic they'll get that Adam Cerra deal done. So we spoke about a deal last night where pick 6 and a future second rounder goes, but Freo gets gives their third rounder back to the Dogs. So the Dogs are about to do a deal right now for Gold Coast Will Brodie. They would also get the Suns pick 19. They give a future pick back next year. It opens up the options for Jordan Clark, maybe for the Adam Cerra deal to have 6 and 19. All of a sudden, they've got Arsenal there. So let's talk about the Blues. They nail Cerra, they nail Dawson, they nail George Hewitt, rather.
Yep.
How good's that midfield? Where do you rate it in the pecking order, 1 to 18?
I like their midfield. The evidence in front of us, Ralphie, is they aren't that good just yet.
Yep.
You look at those names on paper and it's extremely risky. They have a lot of really good players that should simply be better than what they are right now. You add in Hewitt, that gives them a little bit of balance around that midfield, someone that's prepared to run defensively, shut down a player. You add in young Cerra, who's going to be a star for the next 10 years. It's really juicy. It looks fantastic. You've just got to do it, unfortunately. That's the only bit that they haven't done this list.
The best teams have 8 to 10 players roll through their midfield. Carlton don't have that as yet to be top end, so they sit still probably middle of the rung in terms of their midfield group.
It's an indictment that they've had to really go and get George Hewitt for 4 years at 450, that they can't develop a player who's going to be defensively minded and run both ways and tag as well.
That's a good point.
What about you?
I think they're going to be enormous next year, Carlton. I really do. Really bullish about the way their midfield looks. Their forward line, I'd love to coach that forward line. I would pay anything to do that. Michael Voss, if you're watching. But I think they're exciting times, and you can overload your midfield, but they're all quality players that are on the up, and 90% of those have got so much room to improve. As we take a break, Jono, you've just bought a tally. You got the 4K.
I have.
You've never seen it clear.
Ultra HD.
Years. When you retired, you've had that tally for that long, haven't you? So you've got a new tally, you're ready to go. The Turkish Grand Prix starts this weekend. And F1 time, Jono, who's the Hamilton?
Yeah, Hamilton v Lewis, 2 points in it. But look out for Dan Ricciardo. He's on a bit of a fly this last month.
Well, it's going to be an absolute beauty. So tune into that on Fox Sports.
About the players, but we should mention the families who ride every bump of the roller coaster that is a young man's football journey. Right around Australia right now, are right on the edge of their seats.
Well, they are.
With pick 2, the Adelaide Crows have selected Riley Philthorpe from West Adelaide.
You got mauled on the couch there a moment ago. The family went crazy.
With pick 17, Oliver Henry from the Geelong Falcons. With pick 9, the Essendon Football Club have selected Archie Perkins from the Sandringham Dragons.
A wonderful smile there and a tear in the eye.
Western Bulldogs have matched the Adelaide Crows' bid for Jamara Ugelhagen from the Oakley Chargers.
What a moment. What a special, beautiful moment.
Oh, it is. Look, those pictures are just absolutely brilliant, aren't they? The emotion, it gets to work very shortly, but what a moment for the family.
The NAB AFL Draft starts on the 24th of November. Every young man's dream and their path to prime time. And one man who's going to be front and centre to that is Sam Darcy, Johnny Ralph.
That's right, the father-son for the Western Bulldogs. I understand I expect he'll be the number 3 selection. So a 205-centimetre ruckman who can go back, who can play forward as well. He can do it all, but he's really raw. So, Jono, Tim English potentially needs to step up for the next couple of years until he blossoms. Do you believe in Tim English after a pretty quiet season? David King didn't love his grand final. He said the Dogs should put him on the trade table. How do they, not rejuvenate him, how do they really spark him into the player he can be? Yeah, well, he's got some strong attributes, no doubt, as Timmy English. So has this young man on screen with some of the highlights, making us all smile at the moment. Look, you can see that combination in the future of Ugelhagen, Norton and potentially Sam Darcy as well. Look, Sam's been fanatical for about 6 years now in terms of he's done sprint training for 6 years straight. He's worked extremely hard on his core strength. So he's not overly big, yet he's got unbelievable strength for a young guy. So there's those attributes that he brings in. The only thing that he hasn't done is played much footy the last 2 years, which is which is the case for a lot of Victorian teenagers coming through at the moment. But can play centre half back, can play forward as well. The ruck stuff is probably a work in progress. It took Luke probably about 3 or 4 years to break over Scotty Wine. So, look, but he's got a competitive streak, which doesn't surprise me either with the way that Luke used to play also. So there's some great attributes that go with it other than just being a good mark or 205. There's aspects of what he's done over the last period of time, being fanatical about his approach to wanting to be drafted, that might hold him in good stead leading into his first pre-season.
And I still see plenty of growth in Tim English as well. No, I wouldn't move him on because you want to have multiple options. You want to have 2 guys that can play ruck and forward. And you just brought in this young man in Darcy. He needs time to grow as well. You can't expect him to take the number 1 mantle. We know Steph Martin hasn't got long left, so I think you keep him there and let him grow as well, being Tim English.
See, it's Tim English's marking for me because when he's committed to the marking contest, he's either brings it to the ground in the right spot or he marks it himself, or they chop the arms, he gets the free kick. When he's not committed and he gets nudged under, that's what looks terrible in terms of Tim's game.
You can improve that area, though.
Yes, and that's the aspect I think that needs to come. Forget the ruck stuff. Around the ground, he just needs to be down the line, competitive in the air, and make those contributions to the team. When the ball goes in high up forward, make that contribution in a really competitive nature. And whether he can bring it or not, well, that's the big question mark consistently.
Yeah, and John Segler, as a 2-year stopgap, would be absolutely perfect because Steph Martin is 35 next year. We know his body's banged up. We know that Darcy won't be ready for a couple of years. And so if they can get that kind of player in, they're clearly in the premiership build and premiership window absolutely next year.
Del, the Richmond window, are they looking at the window or are they drawing the curtains?
They have no choice but to go again. And you look at their draft picks of what they've got coming in this year. We've spoken a lot about the Hawthorn Football Club and what is possibly up for offer. You mentioned you can go in there, knock on Sam Mitchell's door and say, can we please have one of your really good players? I'm thinking Tom Mitchell, I'm thinking O'Meara as well. You look at what the Tigers haven't been great at in years gone by, as successful as they have been. It's the stoppage work, it's the contested work. You've got 2 guys there that are a proven product, that they love putting their nose over the football and they love giving it to people on the outside. I would not be angry or disappointed if I was a Tigers supporter. They've got 100-odd thousand members to say, I get it. We're going for 4 premierships in 6 years. If that means we're not going to be great or competitive for 10 years, I can cop that. I can cop that. Use one of those picks. Now, clearly you want to push it out as far as you can. Go and get one of those proven plays that you know, even if you have to pay a little bit over to go one more time.
Well, the question is, can John, being the Richmond supporter, can you cop that?
A decade, 1983 to 2016. They were very, very bleak years. You know what? There's enough young kids coming through. There's enough trade arsenal there. I'd love them to go and get a Tom Mitchell there, and I don't think they're going to fall off the cliff. If they were, I'd be a bit more cautionary about it, but I love it.
You threw in O'Meara there. That was a bit of a sort of caught me by surprise in terms of throwing his name in that mix.
I love him. I do that from a Tigers perspective. I love him at the Hawks already and what he's also done at the Gold Coast Suns. I'm just thinking, what will make them different? What will be that point of difference like we touched on before for the Cats? That could be their piece to get one more out of it.
Well, you mentioned that then. The Cats, they've done that for 10 years, been up there. So why would Richmond go off the cliff now? They've got a great opportunity. O'Meara, I love.
Get some of those injured boys back.
Mitchell, I love.
He allowed Dusty Martin to play 80-20 forward mid.
Not forgetting what Bolton did in the midfield this year
Exactly.
and how good he was with his speed and spark.
Oh, he was unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's all we've got time for, boys. Thank you very much to the A team, John Ralph, Nick D'Alessandro and Brad Johnson. I think you know where this is going. So the B team will be back tomorrow, headed by, of course, Tom Morris and the crew. But you've been watching Training Day. We've got 1 week to go. Tomorrow, we pick it all up again from 5 p.m.